I heard my mother say exactly 6 words that chilled my spine. It was an accident, but what accident comes with a receipt for rat poison, bought on the exact day and time? What accident has my sister playing the victim while my dog lies gasping on the emergency table? I stayed silent. I nodded. I let them think I believed it. Then I started peeling back the truth. And by the end, nobody could pretend anymore. My name is Callista Thorne, and for the better part of my early 30s, I have existed as the invisible spine of my family. I do not mean that in a poetic sense. I mean it in the literal. Sweat on your brow, dirt under your fingernails sense. I work for Thorncrest Facility Services, a company my grandfather built and my father, Graham, inherited, while my sister Tatum holds a vague title involving brand management that mostly requires her to attend luncheons and curate her social media feed. I am the one in the trenches. I am the operations manager, which is a polite way of saying I am the one who drives to a warehouse at 3 a.m. when a pipe bursts. I am the one who negotiates with angry union reps. I am the one who makes sure the lights stay on so the Thorne name stays polished. I am practical. I am sturdy. And in the ecosystem of the Thorne family, I am entirely disposable. That reality usually does not bother me. I have my own life, carved out in the quiet moments between crises, the center of that life. The only thing that truly makes my small apartment feel like a sanctuary is rigid, furry, and 70 pounds of pure, unadulterated devotion. His name is Miller. He is a rescue, a mix of boxer and something softer, maybe lab, with eyes that look at you like you are the only person who has ever existed in the history of the universe. I found him 2 years ago, tied to a fence behind one of our clients' industrial parks, half-starved and terrified of his own shadow. We saved each other. He is my family, my real family. It was a Sunday afternoon when I made the mistake of bringing him to my parents' house. It was a mandatory gathering. My father had summoned us for what he called a quarterly review disguised as a barbecue. I had tried to leave Miller at home, but he had been battling a minor stomach bug earlier in the week, and the vet had advised me to keep an eye on him. I was not going to leave him alone for 6 hours. So, I packed his water bowl, his favorite blanket, and I drove 40 minutes to the sprawling suburban fortress my parents call home. As soon as I walked through the front door, the air changed. It is a specific talent of my sister, Tatum. She can shift the atmospheric pressure of a room just by sighing. She was standing in the foyer, holding a glass of white wine, looking immaculate in a cream-colored linen dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked at me, then she looked down at Miller, who was sitting politely by my heel, his tail giving a tentative, low wag. "Oh," she said, "you brought the beast. He is not a beast." "Tatum," I said, keeping my voice level. I tightened my grip on the leash. "He is recovering from a stomach issue. I need to monitor him. He will stay right by me." Tatum wrinkled her nose, a micro-expression of disgust that she had perfected in high school. "It smells like a wet dog here already. Mom just had the carpets deep cleaned." "Callista, you know how much that costs." I did know how much it cost. I was the one who processed the invoice for the cleaning company through the business account because my mother insisted it was a business expense. "He is clean." I said, "We will stay in the kitchen." My mother, Lydia, appeared from the hallway. She was wearing an apron that was clearly for show, as she had never cooked a meal that did not come from a catering box in her life. She looked at Tatum, then at me, and instantly aligned herself with the path of least resistance. "Callista, honey," Lydia said, her voice tight. "Tatum is right. We have guests coming later. The marshals are stopping by. We cannot have a dog underfoot. It is just not sanitary. He is fine." "Mom," I said, "he is just going to sleep under the table. Please." Tatum interrupted, stepping back as if Miller were radioactive. "Just put him outside. The weather is nice. He will be happier out there chasing squirrels or whatever it is that street dogs do. He is not a street dog," I snapped. "Callista, don't start," my mother warned, "just for a little while, until we eat. Then you can take him home. For heaven's sake, let us have a peaceful afternoon. It is just the backyard. It is fenced. He will be fine. I looked at Miller. He looked back at me. Trusting. The backyard was safe. It was manicured, enclosed, and empty. I was tired of fighting. I was tired of being the difficult one, the one who ruined the aesthetic. Fine, I said. I led Miller through the kitchen to the sliding glass doors. I set his water bowl down on the patio. I rubbed his ears. You be a good boy, I whispered. I will be right here. I promise. I slid the door shut. Through the glass, I saw him sit down and look at me. Tatum was suddenly beside me, her arms crossed. See? That is better. Now we can actually breathe. I ignored her and went to the sink to wash my hands. I scrubbed them hard, trying to wash away the feeling that I had just lost a negotiation I should have won. The next 20 minutes were a blur of banal conversation. My father, Graham, talked about the rising cost of insurance premiums. Tatum talked about a potential rebranding strategy she had read about in a magazine. My mother nodded and refilled wine glasses. I kept glancing at the sliding glass door. Miller was out of sight, presumably exploring the far corner of the yard near the rose bushes. Then I heard a sound. It was a sharp, high-pitched yelp, followed by a strange, rhythmic thumping against the glass. I dropped the salad tongs I was holding. I did not excuse myself. I ran. When I reached the door and slid it open, the sound hit me first. It was the sound of air struggling to move through a throat that was closing up. Miller was on his side on the patio tiles. His legs were paddling frantically, scraping against the stone. His eyes were rolled back, showing the whites, and there was a thick, pinkish foam gathering at the corners of his mouth. Miller, I screamed. I fell to my knees beside him. His body was convulsing. He was burning up, his muscles rigid and shaking violently. This was not a stomach bug. This was not normal. Mom. Dad. I yelled over my shoulder. Something is wrong. My mother appeared in the doorway, glass in hand. Oh, my God, she said, but she did not move forward. She stayed on the carpet. Is he having a fit? Don't let him bite you. Callista. Tatum stood behind her. She looked at the convulsing dog, and then she looked at me. Her face was blank, not scared, not worried, just blank, like she was watching a television screen that had lost its signal. He is poisoned, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The foam, the seizure. Help me get him to the car, I can't lift him. Callista, my mother said, shrinking back. I have a bad back. You know that. Tatum didn't move. She took a sip of her wine. I did not wait for them. Adrenaline is a terrifying thing. I scooped up 70 pounds of seizing muscle and fur in my arms. I staggered through the kitchen, kicking the front door open with my foot. I did not care that I was screaming. I did not care that I was getting foam and urine on my shirt. I threw him into the back seat of my sedan and sped out of the driveway. Tires screeching against the asphalt. The drive to the emergency vet clinic usually takes 15 minutes. I made it in 7. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, Miller was thrashing. I pleaded with the universe, with God, with anyone who was listening. Please don't take him. Please don't take him. I carried him into the clinic, shouting for help. A team of vet techs swarmed us immediately. They took him from my arms and rushed him behind the double doors. I was left standing in the lobby, shaking, covered in his fluids, gasping for air. An hour passed. It felt like 10 years. Finally, the veterinarian, a woman named Dr. Evans with tired eyes and a stern face, came out. She motioned for me to sit. Is he alive? I asked. My voice sounded wrecked. He is alive, Dr. Evans said, but it is critical. We have him on IV fluids, anticonvulsants, and vitamin K. We are trying to stabilize his clotting factors. Clotting factors? I asked. Callista, the doctor said, looking at her clipboard. Based on the symptoms, the tremors, the foaming, the immediate neurological distress, and the blood work we just ran. This looks like acute toxicosis, specifically rodenticide poisoning, rat poison, and a high dose of it, rat poison. I shook my head. No, that is impossible. My parents have a landscaping service. They don't use poison. They use traps. I know this. I pay the bill for the exterminators at the office and the house. The doctor looked at me sympathetically but firmly. Dogs don't just develop these symptoms spontaneously. He ingested a neurotoxic bait block, likely within the last hour given the speed of the onset. If you hadn't brought him in when you did, he would be dead right now. I felt the blood drain from my face. Within the last hour, we need to keep him for at least 48 hours. Dr. Evans continued, the treatment is aggressive. I need to be transparent with you about the cost. The emergency stabilization, the overnight monitoring, the plasma transfusions if he needs them. You are looking at roughly $3,000 to $4,000 just for the first 2 days. Do it, I said without hesitation. I don't care. Just save him. I handed over my credit card. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely get it out of my wallet. Once the paperwork was signed, the shock began to recede, and something else took its place. A cold, hard clarity. Miller had been in a fenced yard. He had been alone, and he had ingested rat poison in a house that I knew, for a fact, did not keep rat poison on the premises because my mother was terrified of chemicals near her vegetable garden. Someone had given it to him. I walked out of the clinic and got back into my car. I did not go home. I drove straight back to my parents' house. When I walked back into the kitchen, the scene was grotesque in its normalcy. My mother was wiping down the counter. My father was looking at his tablet. Tatum was sitting at the island, scrolling through her phone. They looked up when I entered. Well, my mother asked, is the dog okay? He is fighting for his life, I said. My voice was low, terrifyingly calm. The vet said it was rat poison, a massive dose. My mother put a hand to her chest. Oh, that is terrible. He must have eaten something in the bushes. I told you. Callista, you cannot just let animals run loose. He was not running loose, I said. He was in your backyard. The backyard that the landscapers cleared 2 days ago. I saw the invoice. There was no poison laid down. I stared at Tatum. She did not look up from her phone immediately. When she did, she looked bored. What Tatum said, why are you staring at me? You wanted him gone. I said, you complained about him the second I walked in. You insisted I put him outside. Tatum slammed her phone down on the counter. The noise echoed in the kitchen. Excuse me, she said, her voice rising an octave. Are you seriously implying what I think you are implying? This is insane. You are hysterical. I am not hysterical. I said, I am telling you that my dog was poisoned with a bait block that had no business being in this yard, and you were the only one who went near the back door after I let him out. I walked toward her. I saw you. Tatum. You went to the cooler on the patio to get a soda. I did not touch your stupid dog, Tatum shouted. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. Mom, Dad. She is accusing me of poisoning a dog. This is sick. She is jealous of me. She has always been jealous, and now she is making up crazy stories. My father, Graham, stepped between us. He was a large man, but soft around the edges. He hated conflict, which meant he always sided with the person crying the loudest. Callista. Stop it, he boomed. That is enough. You're upset. We get it. But do not come into this house and accuse your sister of something criminal. It is a dog. Dogs eat things. It happens. It does not just happen. Dad. I yelled, my control slipping. Someone put it there. Tatum was sobbing now. Full heaving breaths. Her face buried in her hands. I cannot believe she hates me this much. She wailed. I try so hard, and she just hates me. My mother rushed to Tatum, wrapping her arms around her. Shh, baby, shh. It is okay. She does not mean it. She is just in shock. My mother looked at me over Tatum's shoulder. Her eyes were hard, cold. There was no sympathy in them. Go home, Callista, my mother said. Just go home. We will talk when you are sane. I looked at them, the tableau of the perfect family. Protecting the golden child. I felt sick to my stomach. I turned around and walked toward the front door. I was halfway down the front walk when I heard the door open behind me. I thought it was my father coming to apologize, or maybe offer to pay the vet bill. It was my mother. She walked out in her slippers, crossing the driveway to where I stood by my car. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She pulled me close, leaning in so that her face was inches from mine. She smelled of lavender and expensive white wine. She looked me dead in the eye. The mask of the concerned matriarch dropped. "It was an accident," she whispered. I stared at her. "What?" "You heard me," she hissed. "Whatever you think happened, whatever you think you know, let it go. It was an accident. Tatum has a bright future. She is under a lot of pressure." I felt the air leave my lungs. "You know," I said, "you know she did it." My mother tightened her grip on my arm until it hurt. "I am telling you to drop it. Callista, do not destroy this family over a dog. Do not ruin your sister's life because of a mistake." She released my arm and smoothed down the front of her apron. "Go home. Take care of your pet. We will pay the bill. Just keep your mouth shut." She turned and walked back into the house, closing the heavy oak door firmly behind her. I stood there in the driveway, the evening sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. I looked at the closed door. I thought about Miller, alone in a metal cage, fighting against the poison burning through his veins. I thought about the $3,000 I had just spent. I thought about the smirk that was likely returning to Tatum's face right now. It was an accident. That was the line they drew in the sand. I got into my car. I did not cry. I wiped the remaining foam from my shirt. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They thought I would fold. They thought I was the same Callista who cleaned up their messes, who took the scraps, who kept the peace to keep her place. They were wrong. I started the engine. The investigation began now. The fluorescent lights of the veterinary clinic hummed with a frequency that seemed to vibrate directly against my skull. I had been sitting in the same hard plastic chair for 6 hours, watching the rise and fall of Miller's chest through the glass of the observation unit. Every time he twitched, my heart hammered against my ribs. I kept replaying the last 24 hours on a loop, dissecting them frame by frame like security footage. I saw Tatum's face in the kitchen, perfectly composed while I panicked. I saw the way she stood back, sipping her wine, as if she were watching a mildly interesting documentary rather than a family emergency. But mostly, I heard my mother's voice. It was an accident. That sentence was a trap. If it was an accident, that meant they admitted the poison was there. It meant they admitted knowledge of the substance. You do not call a spontaneous medical event an accident. You call a car crash an accident. You call a fall down the stairs an accident. An accident implies an event, an action, a cause. If Miller had simply gotten sick, she would have said, "It is just a bug," or "He must have eaten a bad mushroom." But she said it was an accident. She knew. Dr. Evans came out of the back room, looking exhausted. She held a clipboard and sat down opposite me, rubbing her temples. "He is stable for now," she said. "We have managed to control the seizures, but I need to ask you again about the environment." "Callista." I sat up straighter, wincing at the stiffness in my back. "I told you, my parents' backyard, landscaped, fenced, Dr. Evans nodded slowly. "I understand that, but the toxicology report came back more specific. This was not a secondary poisoning. He did not eat a rat that had eaten poison. The concentration in his system is too high for that. He ingested the bait directly, and not the pellets that are sometimes scattered in crawl spaces. This was a block, a wax block. They are usually bright green or blue, designed to smell like peanut butter or vanilla to attract rodents. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Peanut butter. Miller would eat anything that smelled like peanut butter. These blocks do not just fall out of the sky. Dr. Evans continued, her voice professional but pointed. They are usually secured in tamper-proof stations. For a dog to get this much of it, the block had to be loose. It had to be out in the open. I nodded. My jaw set so hard my teeth ached. "I know." I said, "Thank you, Doctor." I left the clinic an hour later, leaving Miller hooked up to his IVs. I needed to go back to the scene. I needed to see the physical space where my family had decided my dog's life was less important than their convenience. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, the house was quiet. My father would be at the office. My mother would be at her Pilates class. Tatum usually didn't surface until noon on Mondays, or she would be working remotely from a coffee shop. It was the perfect window. I let myself in with my key and went straight to the backyard. The patio was clean. My mother had already hosed down the spot where Miller had convulsed, erasing the physical evidence of his pain. I walked out onto the grass. I retraced Miller's steps. He had gone to the far corner, near the hydrangeas. I knelt down in the mulch. The landscaping was immaculate, as always. But then I saw it. Just behind the largest bush, the soil was disturbed. It wasn't the erratic digging of a squirrel. It was a smooth, shallow depression, like something had been placed there and then hastily removed. The dirt was loose, darker than the sun-bleached topsoil around it. I brushed the dirt aside. There were crumbs, tiny, waxy, teal-colored crumbs. I took my phone out and snapped 3 photos. Close up, wide angle, context shot. "What are you doing?" The voice made me jump. I spun around. Tatum was standing on the patio, wearing a silk robe, holding a steaming mug of coffee. She looked refreshed, rested, the complete opposite of the wreck I felt like. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees. "I am looking for what you fed my dog." Tatum sighed, a long, exaggerated sound of exhaustion. "Oh my God. Callista, are we still doing this?" "I thought Mom talked to you." "She did." I said, walking toward her. "She told me it was an accident," which is funny, because accidents usually happen by chance, but I just found crumbs of a poison block behind the hydrangeas. That looks like placement. "Tatum, that looks like a trap." Tatum took a sip of her coffee, her eyes bored. "You are so dramatic. You have always been this way. Everything is a conspiracy against you. Remember when I got the lead in the school play and you said I bribed the teacher? You just cannot handle that bad things happen sometimes." "That is gaslighting." "Tatum," I said, my voice steady. "And I am not 16 anymore. I know what I see." "You see what you want to see," she countered, turning back toward the sliding door. "You are upset. You are tired. You are looking for someone to blame because you feel guilty for bringing that dirty animal into a clean house. Just go to work. Callista, Dad is asking where you are." She slid the door shut in my face. I stared at her through the glass. She didn't look back. She just walked into the kitchen, confident in her immunity. She knew the rules of this house better than I did deny, deflect, and wait for Dad to smooth it over. I drove to the Thorncrest offices with a burning sensation in my chest that had nothing to do with heartburn. The company headquarters was a squat, brick building in an industrial park. It lacked glamour, but it generated millions in revenue, mostly thanks to the contracts I managed. When I walked in, the receptionist, Brenda, looked relieved. "Oh, thank goodness you are here. Callista, the pipe at the logistics center on 4th Street blew. The basement is flooding. They are threatening to cancel the contract. I didn't even go to my desk. I grabbed my hard hat and boots from my trunk and drove straight to the site. For the next 4 hours, I was ankle-deep in freezing water. I coordinated the emergency plumbing team. I managed the extraction crew, and I personally walked the facility manager through the repair timeline to keep him from calling his lawyers. I calmed him down, not with charm, but with competence. I showed him the maintenance logs, proved the failure wasn't on our end, but fixed it anyway as a gesture of goodwill. By the time I left, he was shaking my hand and thanking me. I returned to the office wet, smelling of mildew, and exhausted. I walked into the conference room where the weekly leadership meeting was wrapping up. My father sat at the head of the table. Tatum was there, dressed in a sharp blazer, looking dry and professional. "Ah, Callista," my father said, looking up. "Good on you for joining us." Tatum was just telling us about the situation at the logistics center. I stopped. She was what Tatum smiled. A tight, corporate smile. I was just updating Dad and the team on how we handled the crisis. I told them we managed to retain the client and turn it into a service upgrade opportunity. I asked, I just spent 4 hours in standing water. Tatum, you were here drinking lattes. Tatum waved a hand dismissively. I was managing the communication channels. Callista, you know the client emailed me while you were on site. I smoothed over the relationship. It is a team effort. You do the hands-on work. I handle the optics. That is how it works. My father nodded in agreement. Tatum is right. Callista, she kept us informed. Good work, both of you. But listen, sit down. We have something important to discuss. I sat down, the dampness of my jeans seeping into the upholstery of the chair. I have been thinking a lot about the future of Thorncrest. My father began. He clasped his hands on the table. We are growing. The market is changing. We need leadership that reflects where we are going, not just where we have been. He looked at Tatum, beaming with pride. Tatum has shown a real aptitude for the bigger picture. Her ideas about rebranding and client acquisition are exactly what we need. So, effective next month, I am appointing Tatum as the Executive Vice President. She will be my direct successor. The room went silent. I looked from my father to Tatum. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. What I asked. My voice was quiet. Dad, I run the operations. I know every bolt in every building we manage. I know the crews. I know the unions. Tatum does not know the difference between a circuit breaker and a sump pump. It is not about technical skills. Callista, my father said, his tone shifting to that patronizing octave he reserved for explaining things to children. It is about image. It is about management style. You are indispensable in the field. You are a worker. Callista, you have that grit. But Tatum. She looks like a CEO. She speaks the language. I felt like I had been slapped. Indispensable in the field. A worker. So I stay in the mud while she sits in the corner office. I asked, is that the plan? My mother, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally spoke up. Callista, don't be difficult. It is a family company. We all play our parts. If I'm playing a part, I want equity. I said. I looked directly at my father. If she gets the title, I want 20% of the shares. I want voting rights. I have earned it. I have saved this company more money in the last 5 years than Tatum has ever generated. My father laughed. A short, sharp bark. Ownership, Callista. Be realistic. You are not suited for the boardroom. You are too emotional, too focused on the details. You fit operations, not ownership. I looked at my mother. Mom. Lydia sighed, adjusting her scarf. She looked pained. Not for me, but for the awkwardness of the moment. Honey, don't be selfish. Your sister needs this platform. You are strong. You can handle the work. Tatum needs the position to establish herself. Why can't you just be happy for her? Family needs harmony. Callista, don't ruin this. Don't ruin this. The same words she used when she told me not to report the poisoning. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I looked at the three of them, the unified front, the wall of delusion. I have to go check on my dog. I said, just keep your phone on. Tatum called out as I walked to the door. I might need you to explain the billing codes for the logistics center later. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just walked out into the parking lot and got into my car. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. They didn't just see me as a second-class citizen. They saw me as a utility, an appliance that worked when needed and stayed silent when not. My phone rang. It was the clinic. I answered on the first ring. Hello, Callista. It is Dr. Evans. My heart stopped. Is he okay? Did he crash? No, he is awake, she said quickly. He is doing better. He actually ate a little bit of food. That is a very good sign. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. Thank God. But Callista, Dr. Evans hesitated. There is something else. We analyzed the stool sample he passed about 20 minutes ago. We found undigested fragments of the bait block. Okay, I said. That confirms it was the block. Yes, but it confirms something else, she said. Her voice dropped lower. Based on the volume of the fragments, this wasn't just a nibble. A dog of his size might eat 1 block if he was hungry, but the amount of toxin in his blood and the physical volume suggests he consumed at least 3 separate blocks. 3 blocks, I whispered. Yes, she said. Dogs don't usually eat that much of this stuff voluntarily because it has a bitter agent added to it specifically to prevent this. To eat 3 blocks, someone would have had to coat them in something very appetizing, like heavy cream or bacon grease. I stared at the dashboard of my car. This wasn't an accident. Callista, Dr. Evans said. And it wasn't just a casual toss over the fence. Someone used a dose meant to kill a horse. Someone wanted to make absolutely sure he didn't wake up. I hung up the phone. I sat in the silence of the parking lot. I thought about Tatum's smile. I thought about my mother's accident. They didn't just want him gone. They wanted him dead. And they thought I was too stupid, or too weak, to do anything about it. I started the car. I wasn't going to the hospital. I was going home to get my laptop. If they wanted to talk about business, about operations and details, then I was about to become the most detailed operator they had ever met. The investigation was over. The war had just begun. I sat at my kitchen table, the silence of the apartment pressing against my ears, without the click-clack of Miller's claws on the hardwood, or the heavy sigh of his breathing while he slept. The place felt like a tomb. I had a black composition notebook open in front of me. I was not writing a diary entry. I was building a timeline. I drew a line down the center of the page. On the left, I wrote the times. On the right, the movements. 12 o'clock arrival at the Thorne estate. 12:15. Tatum comments on the smell. 12:30. Mom insists Miller goes outside. 12:45. Tatum goes to the kitchen for more wine. 12:50. Tatum is seen by the sliding glass door alone. 1:10. Miller collapses. I stared at the entry for 12:50. That was the window. 20 minutes. That was all it took to destroy the one thing I loved most. I underlined it twice, the pen digging into the paper until it tore. The next morning, I drove to Thorncrest with a singular focus. I expected the atmosphere to be tense, but I did not expect to be erased. When I logged into the shared company calendar, my week was blank. I blinked, refreshing the page. Usually, my schedule was a Tetris block of site visits, vendor negotiations, and safety compliance audits. But the slots for the Tuesday walkthrough with the Raven Peak representatives, our biggest potential client this quarter, were gone. In their place was a single, recurring task inventory audit. South Annex. The South Annex was a glorified storage shed where we kept broken floor buffers and expired cleaning solvents. It was busy work. It was a task for an intern, not the operations manager. I walked straight to the admin desk. Sarah, the office coordinator, looked up and immediately dropped her gaze to her keyboard. Sarah, I said, keeping my voice pleasant, why has my schedule been cleared? I'm supposed to lead the Raven Peak walkthrough tomorrow. Sarah bit her lip. She looked pained. Oh, Callista, Tatum, Ms. Thorne. She updated the project assignments this morning. She said you are going through a personal crisis with your pet, and that we shouldn't burden you with high-stress clients right now. She assigned herself to lead the Raven Peak tour. I felt a vein throb in my temple. A personal crisis. She was weaponizing my grief to push me out. What is doing what I asked? She is taking the lead, Sarah whispered, glancing toward the executive offices. She said she wants to present more. Polished front. I walked away before I said something that would get me fired on the spot. I went to the break room to get coffee, my hands shaking with suppressed rage. 2 of the sales guys, Mark and Jason, were standing by the coffee machine. They didn't hear me walk in. I don't know, man, Mark was saying, stirring sugar into his mug. Tatum made it sound like Callista is basically having a breakdown. She told the team this morning that she is finally stepping up to fix the operational drag. Jason laughed. Operational drag. Callista is the only reason the checks are clear. Yeah, well, Mark shrugged. Tatum said Callista is good at the dirty work. Like the help, but not the vision stuff. Said she's basically the glorified housekeeper of the family. The glorified housekeeper, The hired help. I backed out of the room silently. I didn't confront them. It wouldn't help. If I screamed now, I would just prove Tatum right that I was emotional, unstable, a liability. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be colder. I spent the day counting mops in the South Annex, my mind whirring like a hard drive. If Tatum wanted to play the polished executive, fine. I would let her, because while she was polishing her image, she was getting sloppy with the details. And the devil is always in the details. At 5 o'clock, I left the office. I didn't go home. I drove to my parents' house. I needed a pretext, so I texted my mother. Coming by to pick up Miller's bowl and blanket. I left them on the patio. She replied instantly, "Okay, we are eating dinner. Please don't cause a scene." When I arrived, the house was filled with the smell of roasted chicken. It made my stomach turn. I walked through the kitchen. My parents and Tatum were seated at the dining table. Tatum looked up, a forkful of potato halfway to her mouth. She didn't speak. She just watched me with that detached, heavy-lidded gaze. "Just getting my stuff," I said briefly. I walked out to the patio. The water bowl was where I had left it, dry and full of leaves. I picked it up. As I turned to go back inside, my eyes caught the large municipal trash bins lined up against the side of the garage. It was Monday. Trash pickup was Tuesday morning. I paused. The wind shifted, and I caught a scent. It wasn't just the garbage. It was sweet, cloying, and chemically sharp, like artificial vanilla and bleach. I looked back at the house. They were talking. I could hear the murmur of voices and the clinking of silverware. They weren't watching. I stepped over to the bins. The lid of the recycling bin was slightly ajar. I lifted it. On top of a stack of flattened cardboard was a crumpled brown paper bag. It wasn't a grocery bag. It was smaller, thicker. I reached in and grabbed it. I didn't dare uncrumple it fully right there, too much noise. But I saw the logo stamped on the side in red ink, Harding's Home Garden. It was a local hardware store about 4 miles away. Not a big chain. A place where they still wrote things down. I shoved the paper bag into my purse, grabbed Miller's bowl, and walked back through the kitchen. "Got it," I said. My mother didn't look up. "Drive safe. Callista." I drove straight to Harding's Home Garden. It was 6:30. They closed at 7. The store smelled of sawdust and fertilizer. I walked to the counter. An older man with thick glasses and a name tag that read Earl was counting the till. "Excuse me," I said, putting on my best distressed pet owner face. It wasn't hard. I was distressed. Earl looked up. "Help you?" "Miss, I hope so." I said, "My dog was poisoned yesterday. The vet says it was a specific type of rat bait block, the teal waxy kind." Earl grimaced. "Ooh, sorry to hear that. Yeah, we sell those. The Tomcat blocks? Nasty stuff." I pulled the crumpled bag out of my purse and smoothed it on the counter. "I found this in the trash at the house where he was poisoned. I need to know if this bag came from here recently." Earl adjusted his glasses. "Well, that is our bag. Sure enough. We use these for small items. Is there any way," I asked, leaning in, "to know who bought rat poison here in the last 48 hours? I just need to confirm the type so the vet can be sure about the treatment." Earl scratched his chin. "I can't give you customer names, miss, privacy policies and all that, even if I remembered. Which I don't, we had a rush on Saturday. Please," I said, "I don't need a name right now. I just need to know if a purchase was made." He hesitated, then tapped a few keys on his beige computer terminal. "Well, I can tell you we sold 6 boxes of the bait blocks this week. 3 of them were sold on Saturday afternoon. Saturday afternoon, the day before the barbecue. If I had a receipt," I asked, my heart beginning to thump. "Would it show the time?" "Oh, yeah," Earl said. "The receipt has the transaction ID, the time, the date, and the SKU. If you have the receipt, I can print out a duplicate for your vet records. But I can't look it up by name without a warrant or something." I nodded. "Thank you. Earl, you have been very helpful." I walked back to my car. I had the bag. I had the store. I had the confirmation that the poison was sold on Saturday. But I didn't have the link to Tatum. Anyone could have bought it. She would just say it wasn't her. She would say I planted the bag. I needed the receipt. I sat in the driver's seat, closing my eyes, Where would the receipt be? Tatum was lazy. She didn't keep records. She likely tossed it in the bag. Maybe the bag got separated from the receipt when she threw it out. The bag in the trash was empty. Then I thought about my mother. Lydia Thorne was a woman of peculiar habits. She was obsessed with appearances, but privately, she was obsessed with household tracking. She didn't trust digital banking. She kept paper receipts for everything: groceries, gas, hardware, in case she needed to return something or prove a discrepancy on the credit card statement. She had a system. She didn't keep them in a file cabinet. She kept them in the kitchen, the command center of her domain. Specifically, she stuffed them into the back pocket of her ancient, grease-stained copy of The Joy of Cooking that sat on top of the microwave until the end of the month, when she would sort them. It was a habit from when she was poor, 30 years ago, and it was the one thing she never changed. If Tatum had bought the poison using one of my mother's cards, which she often did, claiming it was for house supplies, my mother would have taken the receipt. She would have snatched it out of Tatum's hand out of reflex and shoved it into the book. I looked at the clock. 7:15. They would be finished with dinner. My father would be in his study. Tatum would be in her room. My mother would be watching her soaps in the living room. The kitchen would be empty. I started the car and drove back to the house. I parked down the street so they wouldn't see my headlights. I walked up the driveway, my key sweating in my palm. I unlocked the front door quietly. The television was blaring from the living room. I could hear the laugh track of a sitcom. I slipped into the hallway and crept toward the kitchen. It was dark, illuminated only by the light of the stove clock. I moved quickly to the microwave. The book was there. The spine was cracked and peeling, held together by years of use. The Joy of Cooking. I pulled it down. It was heavy. I held my breath and opened the back cover. A flurry of white paper slips fell out onto the granite counter. Gas receipts, dry cleaning, gourmet market. I began to sift through them, my hands trembling. Shell station, $4,500. No, Whole Foods, 128 or 50 cents. No, dry cleaners, 60 dollars. No. My heart sank. Maybe she threw it away. Maybe she knew. Then, I saw a small, square slip of paper stuck between the pages for desserts. It was folded into a tiny square. Tight and sharp, I picked it up. I unfolded it. The header read, Harding's Home Garden. Date Saturday, October 14th. Time, 2:45 p.m. I scanned down the list of items. 1 Mars garden trowel, 2 Baus's terracotta pots, and there, at the bottom, the last item. 1 Papais. Tomcat rat. Poison bait blocks, 4 fawn lobs. I stared at the paper. The letters seemed to vibrate. 2:45 p.m. I pulled out my phone and checked the photos I had synced from the cloud earlier. I had access to the shared family calendar, but I also had something else. I had access to the GPS logs of the company car Tatum drove. Because I was the fleet manager, I hadn't checked it until now because I assumed she used her personal car. I opened the app. Vehicle 2024 Lexus SUV company lease. History for Saturday, October 14th, 2:30 p.m. Departed Thorne residence. 2:42 p.m. Parked at 440 Main Street. 440 Main Street was the address of Harding's Home Garden. I looked back at the receipt. The last 4 digits of the card used were 8890. That was the company expense card my father gave Tatum for client entertainment. She bought poison with the company card. She bought the weapon that killed my dog and expensed it to the business she was trying to steal from me. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. It wasn't a smile of happiness. It was the smile of a hunter who just heard the trap snap shut. I took a photo of the receipt, then another. Then I carefully refolded it and placed it exactly back where I found it, inside the back cover of the cookbook. I wasn't going to take it, not yet. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think the evidence was buried. I slipped out of the kitchen, back down the hall, and out the front door. As I closed the door, I heard my mother's voice from the living room. Tatum, honey, did you hear something? Just the wind. Mom, Tatum's voice floated down from upstairs. Just the wind. I walked to my car. The image of that receipt burned into my retinas. It wasn't the wind. It was a storm, and it was coming straight for them. The next morning, the sun rose with an offensive cheerfulness. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking black coffee. Miller was still at the clinic. The overnight update from Dr. Evans had been cautious but positive. His vitals were stabilizing, though his liver enzymes were still a concern. My phone buzzed against the granite tabletop. It was a text message from Tatum. "Hey sis, just checking in. How is the pup? I hope you are not too stressed today. Mom is worried about you. Maybe take a spa day." I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. She was not checking in. She was checking the temperature. She wanted to see if I was still the hysterical, weeping sister she could manipulate, or if I was something else. She was poking the bear to see if it was asleep. I typed my reply slowly, ensuring my tone was breezy and unconcerned. "He is hanging in there. Thanks for asking. I'm just catching up on some errands." I paused. It was time to set the first snare. "By the way," I added, "I'm going to stop by Harding's later to get some mulch. Did you say you liked those terracotta pots they had in the window? I thought I saw a bag from there in the trash yesterday. If you bought some, let me know if they are heavy." I hit send. I waited. The response came in less than 30 seconds. "Harding's no. I have not been there in ages. I get all my planters online now. The selection is way better. You should check that site I sent you last month." I looked at the screenshot of the receipt on my laptop screen. Date Saturday, October 14th. Time 2:45, Saturday afternoon, the day before the barbecue. That was the day Tatum had told the family she was going out to meet a friend for drinks and to scout locations for a potential company event. She had taken the company car. She lied. She had gone to the hardware store. She had bought the poison. And now, she had denied being there in writing. I took a screenshot of her text message. I uploaded it to the Project Miller folder. The trap was not just set. She had walked right into it. I showered and dressed for work. I chose my clothes carefully. Usually, I wore jeans and a polo shirt, ready to jump into a forklift or crawl under a sink. Today, I put on a tailored navy suit I hadn't worn in 3 years. I put on heels. I pulled my hair back into a severe, tight bun. When I walked into Thorncrest Facility Services, the receptionist, Brenda, did a double take. "Wow. Callista," she said, her eyes widening. "You look different. Big meeting. You could say that." I said. I walked past the open door of the conference room. Tatum was inside, laughing at something on her laptop screen. She looked up as I passed. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second when she saw the suit, but she recovered quickly. Playing dress-up today, she called out. I did not stop. I did not look at her. I walked straight to my father's office. Graham Thorne was on the phone, leaning back in his leather chair. When he saw me, he waved me in, signaling for me to wait. He wrapped up the call with a boisterous laugh and hung up. "Well, look at you," he said, gesturing to my outfit. "Finally taking my advice about professional presentation, that is what I like to see. Callista, maybe Tatum is rubbing off on you." I sat down in the chair opposite him. I did not smile. "I am resigning." "Dad," I said. My father blinked. The smile froze on his face. He leaned forward, confusion clouding his eyes. "Excuse me, I am resigning." I repeated, "I am giving you my 2 weeks' notice today, as a courtesy. But honestly, given the current project load, I can wrap up my essential duties by Friday." He stared at me for a long moment, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, his face turned red. "Is this about yesterday?" he asked, his voice rising. "Is this about the dog, Callista? For God's sake, we talked about this. You are being incredibly dramatic. You cannot just quit your job because you had a fight with your sister." "It is not about a fight," I said calmly. "And it is not about the dog. It is about the future of this company. You made it clear yesterday that the future is Tatum. You said I am a worker. You said I am not ownership material. I have decided to agree with you." I slid a white envelope across the mahogany desk. "This is my formal resignation letter. It includes a transition plan for my current accounts. I have listed the contact information for the facility managers I deal with. Tatum can take it from here. Since she is the executive vice president, I am sure she will have no trouble managing the logistics. My father stood up. He looked furious. You are bluffing, he said. You have nowhere else to go. You have worked here since you were 22. This is your legacy. Callista? No, I said, standing up to meet his gaze. It is your legacy, and now it is Tatum's. I am just the help, and the help is quitting. I turned and walked to the door. Callista, he shouted, if you walk out that door, do not expect a severance package. Do not expect me to come crawling back. I opened the door. I looked back at him. He looked small. Suddenly, small and angry and willfully blind. I don't expect anything. Dad, I said, that is the point. I walked out. I passed Tatum's office again. She was standing in her doorway. Having heard the shouting, she looked stunned. What is going on? She asked. Ask the executive vice president, I said without breaking stride. I spent the next 4 hours packing my office. It didn't take long. I didn't have many personal items. A few photos, a cactus, my collection of safety manuals. As I was putting the last box in my car, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, I answered. Ms. Thorne. The voice was deep, smooth, and familiar. It was a voice I had heard on conference calls, usually demanding answers that only I could provide. This is Callista, I said. This is Evan Rourke, from Raven Peak Packaging. I paused, my hand resting on the trunk of my car. Mr. Rourke, I assume you are calling to reschedule the walkthrough. I am afraid you will need to coordinate that with my sister. Tatum, from now on? There was silence on the other end. Then, a short, dry chuckle. I am not calling to reschedule. Callista, I am calling because my assistant just told me that you updated your LinkedIn profile to open to work about 20 minutes ago, and then I called your office to confirm the walkthrough. Your receptionist sounded like she was at a funeral. She said you were no longer with the company. News travels fast, I said. It does when you are the only person at a vendor who actually knows what they are doing. Evan said. His tone shifted, becoming sharp and businesslike. Listen, Callista, I am going to be blunt. The only reason Raven Peak was considering renewing our contract with Thorncrest was you. I stayed silent, letting him speak. Your sister sent me a proposal last week. Evan continued. It was full of buzzwords and formatting errors. The pricing model was a disaster. She tried to charge us premium rates for standard maintenance. If I hadn't known you were running the floor, I would have shredded it. She is learning. I said, it was a reflex to defend the family name, one I needed to break. I don't have time for her to learn. Evan said, and neither do my factories. I need someone who knows how to run a 24-hour facility without burning the place down. He paused. I want to offer you a job. Callista. I leaned against my car. What kind of job? Director of Operations for the Midwest region. Evan said. Internal? You would be working directly for Raven Peak. No more vendor nonsense. You would have your own budget. You would build your own team. You would have full autonomy over the facility management for 6 sites. I felt a dizzying rush of adrenaline. Director. That was 3 steps above my current role. And the compensation I asked, my voice steady. The base salary is $180,000 a year, Evan said, plus a 20% performance bonus and stock options. I closed my eyes. $180,000. That was nearly triple what my father paid me. He had always justified my low salary by saying I was investing in the family equity. Equity he had just handed to Tatum for free. Why, I asked. Why me? Because you fixed the condenser unit at our Detroit plant on Christmas Eve 2 years ago. Evan said, I remember. You didn't bill us double time. You just got it done. I value competence. Callista. It is a rare commodity. I looked back at the brick building of Thorncrest Facility Services. I saw my father's silhouette in the window, pacing. I accept. I said, good. Evan said, I will have HR send the offer letter within the hour. And Callista. Yes, when you sign it, I want you to be the one to call Thorncrest and cancel our contract. We are taking the facility management in-house. I smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. It would be my pleasure. Mr. Rourke. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. The heavy cloak of obligation, of trying to earn love that was never for sale, had fallen away. I was free, and I was armed. When I got to my apartment, I poured myself a glass of water and sat down at my desk. I had the receipt. I lied in the text message. I had a new job. The foundation was solid. But I needed the nail in the coffin. I opened my laptop. I navigated to a bookmark I hadn't clicked in 6 months. Arlo Secure. Cloud Archive. 2 years ago, during a rash of package thefts in my parents' neighborhood, I had installed a small, wireless security camera under the eaves of their back porch. It was discreet, aimed at the driveway and the back gate. My parents had forgotten about it within a week. The subscription for the cloud storage was billed to my credit card. $5 a month. A sum so small, I never bothered to cancel it even after the theft stopped. I logged in. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Select date, October 15th. Select time, 12:00 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. The video player loaded. I watched the grainy but clear footage of my parents' backyard. At 12:30, I saw myself walk out with Miller. I saw myself set down the water bowl. I saw myself rub his ears and walk back inside. I fast-forwarded. 12:40, empty yard. Miller was sniffing a tree. 12:45, the sliding door opened. I leaned in, holding my breath. Tatum walked out. She was alone. She was holding her wine glass in one hand, in the other. Her hand was clenched into a fist at her side. She looked back at the house, checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, she walked quickly toward the hydrangeas. Miller trotted over to her, his tail wagging. He thought she was coming to play. I watched, sickened, as she used her foot to kick him away gently. Not a violent kick, but a shooing motion. Get away. She crouched down behind the large bush. Her back was to the camera, but I could see her arm moving. She was digging, just a little. Disturbed earth. Then, she reached into her pocket, or was it her waistband? It was hard to tell, but her hand came out holding something small and blocky. She placed it in the dirt. She patted the soil down. She stood up. She wiped her hand on her dress. Then, she turned and looked at Miller. She made a motion with her hand, tossing something else onto the ground near the buried spot. A lure, a piece of food to guide him. Miller moved toward the bush. Tatum turned around and walked back to the sliding glass door. She paused before entering, composed herself, took a sip of wine, and slid the door open. I froze the frame. 12:52 p.m. There she was, the golden child, the future CEO, the sister who claimed it was an accident. I had her. I had her on video planting the poison. I downloaded the clip. I saved it to the Project Miller folder. I sat back in my chair. The sun was setting outside my window, casting long shadows across the floor. I looked at the frozen image of my sister's face. She looked so calm, so entitled to her cruelty. She thought she had buried the problem. She thought she had buried the dog. She had no idea that she had just dug her own grave, and I was going to be the one to push her into it. The first week at Raven Peak Packaging was a revelation. For 10 years, I had worked in the shadows of my father's hesitation and my sister's incompetence, begging for permission to spend $50 on safety goggles. Now, I sat in an office with glass walls overlooking the production floor, a corporate credit card in my wallet, and a mandate to modernize the entire facility. On my third day, I signed a purchase order for new HVAC filtration units. The cost was $12,000. I did not have to write a 3-page justification. I did not have to wait for Tatum to critique the font size of the proposal. I simply reviewed the specs, verified the budget, and signed my name. It was intoxicating. It was the feeling of oxygen filling lungs that had been holding their breath for a decade. Evan Rourke, my new boss, stopped by my office on Friday morning. He leaned against the doorframe, holding a file folder. Settling in, he asked. "It is quiet," I said, smiling. "I am not used to the quiet. I am used to putting out fires. We prefer to prevent fires here," Evan said. He tossed the file onto my desk. "By the way, I thought you would want to know. I just got off the phone with your father. I stopped typing. Oh, I informed him that we are terminating the Thorncrest contract effectively immediately for cause." Evan said. "He tried to argue. He offered to lower their rates by 15%. I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant, like watching a stranger stumble on the sidewalk from a moving car. "And what did you say?" I told him that price was not the issue. Evan said. "I told him that the issue was a fundamental failure in management communication and operational integrity. I specifically cited the disorganized proposal regarding the logistics center. Tatum's proposal." I said. Evan nodded. "I made it clear that without you, we do not have confidence in their ability to execute." He walked away, leaving the file on my desk. I opened it. It was the formal termination letter. It was professional, cold, and final. It was a death blow to Thorncrest's quarterly revenue, and it placed the smoking gun directly in Tatum's manicured hands. My phone began to ring 10 minutes later. The caller ID flashed, "Dad." I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. "Dad." Voicemail. Then "Mom." Voicemail. Then the text messages started arriving. They came in a deluge, vibrating my phone across the mahogany desk. "Dad." Pick up the phone. "Callista, we need to talk. Now. Dad. You cannot do this to us. Did you tell them to cancel, Mom? Your father is having chest pains. Call us. Mom. Do not be vindictive. Family comes first. Tatum sent nothing." Her silence was louder than their screaming. She was waiting. She was calculating. She knew that any text she sent could be used against her, just like the one about the hardware store. She was learning, but she was learning too late. I did not block them. I needed the line open. Every desperate voicemail, every guilt-tripping text was data. It was a seismograph measuring the earthquake I had triggered. I waited until lunch to leave the building. I drove not to my parents' house, but to the police station in the district where they lived. The lobby smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. I approached the front desk and asked to speak to an officer about an animal cruelty case involving a controlled substance. The officer at the desk raised an eyebrow, but directed me to a small cubicle in the back. A detective named Officer Holloway took my statement. He was a young man with a buzz cut and a look of perpetual skepticism. "So, let me get this straight," Holloway said, typing on a battered laptop. "You think your sister poisoned your dog because she was jealous of your position in the family company? I know it sounds like a soap opera," I said, keeping my voice level, "but I have the veterinary toxicology report here." I slid the folder across the desk. It contained Dr. Evans' detailed analysis. The type of poison, the dosage, the timeline of ingestion. It was not accidental ingestion. I continued. The vet confirmed the quantity was massive. 3 blocks, coated in an attractant. And here's the photo of the receipt for that exact brand of poison, purchased the day before the incident. I showed him the printed photo of the receipt I had found in the cookbook. "And this receipt?" Holloway asked, picking up the photo. "Who bought this?" "The card number ends in 8890. I said, "That is a corporate card issued to Tatum Thorne." Holloway looked at the photo, then at me. "This is compelling, Ms. Thorne, but it is circumstantial. We have a receipt, and we have a poisoned dog. We do not have a witness seeing her feed the dog. We do not have her admitting to it. She could claim she bought it for rats in the garage, and the dog got into it by mistake. She denied buying it." I said. I showed him the screenshot of the text message where Tatum claimed she hadn't been to Harding's in ages. She lied about being at the store. Why lie if it was for rats in the garage? Holloway nodded slowly. "That helps. The lie shows consciousness of guilt. But to make a criminal charge stick, especially a felony charge, which is what this amount of damage would be, we need a direct link. We need to put the poison in her hand at the time of the crime." He leaned back. "I can open a file. I can go talk to them, shake the tree a little, but unless we get a confession or a video, The district attorney might not touch it. It is a family dispute. They hate prosecuting these. I sat quietly. I thought about the video on my hard drive. The video of Tatum walking to the bushes. I had it, but if I gave it to him now, he would go arrest her. She would lawyer up, and she might plea it down to a misdemeanor before the full extent of her malice was exposed. I needed them to bury themselves deeper. I needed them to lie to the police first. File the report. I said, I want it on record. Start the investigation. Holloway gave me a case number. I walked out of the station with a piece of paper that felt heavier than lead. It was official now. The state was involved. I got back in my car and checked my phone. There was a new message from my mother. It had come in while I was talking to Holloway. Lydia Callista. Please come over. We can fix this. Dad is willing to discuss the shares. Just come home. They were trying to bargain. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought I was holding the Raven Peak contract hostage for a raise. They still didn't understand that I didn't want the money. I wanted the truth. I drove toward their house. I wasn't going to go in. I wanted to see the dynamic from the outside. As I turned onto their street, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. Lydia. And whatever you do not bring up that receipt you were talking about. It does not matter anymore. My heart skipped a beat. I pulled over to the curb and stared at the screen. It does not matter anymore, I typed back, my fingers flying. What do you mean it does not matter? It proves she bought it. The 3 dots of her typing bubble appeared. Then it disappeared. Then it appeared again. She was hesitating. Finally, the message came through. Lydia, it is gone. I threw it away. I emptied the kitchen trash this morning. It is over. Just let it go. I stared at the text. My breath caught in my throat. She admitted it. She admitted to destroying evidence. I threw it away. She thought she was protecting Tatum, but she had just confessed to obstruction of justice in a text message that was now stored on a cloud server in California. But panic spiked in my chest. If she threw it away this morning, the trash was still there. Pickup was Tuesday. Today was Friday. Unless... I remembered my father complaining last week about the municipal strike rumors. He had hired a private hauling service to come on Fridays for the business, and he often made them swing by the house. I slammed the car into drive and floored it. The engine roared as I sped down the suburban street. Ignoring the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, I needed that physical receipt. The photo was good. The text was good. But the original thermal paper, with Tatum's fingerprints on it. That was the holy grail. I skidded into the driveway. I didn't even turn off the engine. I jumped out of the car and ran to the side of the garage where the bins were kept. The large green bins stood in a neat row. I threw open the lid of the first one. Empty. I threw open the second one. Empty. I kicked the plastic wheel of the bin in frustration. The private haulers had already come. They had come early. The bag containing the receipt, the physical proof that tied Tatum to the purchase, was currently sitting in the back of a compactor truck, being crushed into anonymity, or worse, already dumped into a landfill. I stood there, breathing hard, the smell of exhaust and cut grass in the air. My mother opened the side door of the house. She was wearing a silk robe, her face pale and drawn without makeup. She looked at me, then at the empty bins. She didn't look guilty. She looked relieved. It is gone. Callista, she said softly, standing on the threshold. The truck came at 10 o'clock. I looked at her. I really looked at her. This was the woman who had bandaged my scraped knees. This was the woman who had taught me to read. And now, she was a woman who had woken up, gone into her kitchen, taken the evidence of her daughter's crime, and walked it out to the curb to be destroyed. You think you fixed it, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and sorrow. I am protecting this family, Lydia said, her voice steeling. Tatum made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but she is your sister. We do not send families to jail. We handle it inside. Inside, I repeated, like you handled the poisoning, like you handled the hospital bill. I handled it, Lydia said firmly. It is done. There is no proof. Now come inside. Your father is a wreck. We need to figure out how to get Raven Peak back. She turned and walked back into the house, leaving the door open for me. An invitation to return to the fold. An invitation to be complicit. I looked at the open door. I looked at the empty bins. She was right about one thing. The physical receipt was gone. But she was wrong about the proof. She didn't know about the investigator I had just spoken to. She didn't know about the text message she had just sent me, admitting to the destruction. And she didn't know about the video file sitting on my laptop. She thought she had closed the loop. I pulled my phone out and took a screenshot of her last text. I threw it away. I didn't go inside. I walked back to my car. They thought the game was over because they had burned the board. They didn't realize I was playing a different game entirely. I sat in the driver's seat and dialed Officer Holloway's number on the card he had given me. "Officer," I said when he picked up. "Ms. Thorne, did you forget something?" "No," I said. "I have an update. You said you needed a link. You said you needed more than just a picture." "Yes. My mother just confessed via text message to destroying the physical evidence to protect the suspect." I said, "And I think I know where to find the video you asked for." I hung up. The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting the house in a blood-red glow. I wasn't just going to take Tatum down anymore. I was taking the whole house down. The next morning, I invited my mother to meet me for coffee. I chose a place halfway between my apartment and the Thorne estate, a neutral ground with high ceilings, exposed brick, and enough ambient noise to mask a conversation that would destroy a family. I arrived 10 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee. I sat in a corner booth where I could watch the door. I was not there to scream. I was not there to cry. I was there to perform an autopsy on my relationship with my mother. When Lydia walked in, she looked fragile. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a cashmere wrap, the kind of outfit she wore when she wanted the world to know she was suffering but was too dignified to talk about it. She spotted me and hesitated before walking over. She sat down without ordering anything. She placed her hands on the table, clasping them together. Her knuckles were white. "Thank you for seeing me. Callista," she said. Her voice was thin. "Your father is a mess. He has not slept. He is terrified about the Raven Peak contract." I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter, just the way I needed it to be. "I am not here to talk about the contract. Mom," I said, "I am here to ask you a question." Lydia sighed, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Can we just move past this? Tatum is devastated. She has been in her room for 2 days. She feels terrible about the dog." "Does she?" I asked. "Or does she feel terrible that she got caught, Callista?" "Please," my mother hissed, glancing around to see if anyone was listening. "It was an unfortunate event. It was bad luck. We can pay for the vet bills. We can buy you a new dog if Miller does not make it." I set my cup down. The ceramic made a sharp click against the saucer. "Bad luck does not come with a transaction receipt. Mom, bad luck does not have a timestamp, and bad luck certainly does not require you to wake up at dawn to intercept the garbage truck." Lydia stiffened. She pulled her wrap tighter around herself. "I told you," she said, her voice hardening. "I was cleaning. I threw away a lot of things. Old papers, receipts. It means nothing." I looked at her. I studied the lines around her mouth, the way her eyes refused to meet mine. She was not a criminal mastermind. She was a mother who had spent 30 years smoothing over edges, hiding flaws, and rewriting history to make her life look perfect. This was just another mess to sweep under the rug. But this mess was breathing. This mess was my dog. "What exactly did you throw away?" "Mom," I asked softly. Lydia looked away. "Just trash. Just old papers from the cookbook. I was organizing." "You were not organizing." I said, "You were destroying evidence. You saw the text I sent you. You knew I had found the receipt. You knew it proved Tatum bought the poison. And your first instinct, your only instinct, was to protect her by destroying the truth." "I am protecting this family," Lydia snapped, her voice rising enough to turn a few heads. "You are obsessed with ruining your sister. You are jealous because your father chose her. This is not about the dog anymore. This is about you wanting to punish us." I leaned back. The accusation didn't sting. It just clarified things. "You are right," I said. "It is not about the dog anymore. It is about the fact that you looked me in the eye and told me it was an accident when you knew it was a calculated attack. You chose a side. Mom, You chose the liar because she is the golden child, and you sacrificed me. I did not sacrifice you, she whispered. I just wanted peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Mom, I said, standing up, peace is the presence of justice, and you just threw justice in the trash. I left her sitting there. I did not look back. I walked out of the coffee shop, the bell above the door chiming a cheerful farewell. I got into my car, but I did not drive away. I sat in the parking lot, the engine idling. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. My mother had made her position clear. She was an accomplice. Now, I needed to deal with the perpetrator. I unlocked my phone. I opened the message thread with Tatum. The last message was her lie about the hardware store. I typed slowly. I did not use capital letters to scream. I did not use exclamation points. I used the dull, flat affect of a bureaucrat processing a claim. Callista. I just left Mom. She admitted she threw away the receipt from the cookbook. She thinks that solves the problem. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The bubbles appeared. Tatum, I don't know what you're talking about. You are harassing Mom. Leave her alone. She was sticking to the script. Deny. Deflect. Accuse. Callista. You can keep denying it. Tatum. But here's the reality. I have a digital copy of the receipt. It shows the transaction ID. It shows the time. 2:45 in the afternoon. Last Saturday. Tatum. So someone else could have used the card. I lost my wallet for a few hours that day. I told Dad that. I almost laughed. The lost wallet defense. It was pathetic. Callista. Okay, let us say you lost your wallet, and let us say this mysterious thief found your corporate card, drove specifically to Harding's, bought 4 pounds of rat poison, and then returned the wallet to you without you noticing. That is a great story. Tatum, it is the truth. You are just trying to frame me, Callista. The police are already involved. Tatum, Officer Holloway is pulling the security footage from the Harding's parking lot, and he is pulling the transaction data from the register. If you were not there, the cameras would show it. But if the cameras show your Lexus, and they show you walking out with that bag, that is a felony. That is filing a false police report on top of animal cruelty. It was a bluff. Holloway hadn't pulled the store footage yet. He needed a warrant or a subpoena, which took time. But Tatum didn't know that. Tatum thought the world worked on instant replay. The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared for a long time. She was panicking. She was realizing that her lost wallet story would fall apart the second a video surfaced. Tatum. You are such a bitch. You are doing this because you lost the Raven Peak account. Callista. I didn't lose the account. Tatum. I took it with me. But that is irrelevant. I am asking you one last time. Did you buy the poison? If you tell the truth now, it might look better for you than if the police find out later. This was the pivot point, the psychological squeeze. I was offering her a tiny, illusionary exit ramp, a chance to control the narrative. Tatum, I didn't mean to hurt him. There it was, the crack in the dam. Callista. What do you mean, Tatum? I just wanted to scare him. He's a menace. He sheds everywhere. He barks. I just wanted him to get sick so you would have to take him home and leave him there. I didn't think he would eat all of it. It was just a deterrent. I stared at the screen. A deterrent. She called a neurotoxic poison a deterrent. She had admitted to placing it. She had admitted to the intent to cause harm, even if she claimed she didn't mean to kill. In the eyes of the law, reckless endangerment that results in severe injury is enough. I took a screenshot, then another. I scrolled up and captured the entire conversation. I exported the chat log as a PDF. I emailed it to myself. I uploaded it to the cloud. I typed one last response. Callista. You just admitted to poisoning my dog to manipulate my schedule. Thank you. I blocked her number. I sat back in the seat, letting out a long breath. It was done. I had the confession. It was messy. It was self-serving. And it was full of excuses. But it was a confession. I started the car to drive home. I felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Relief, yes, but also a deep, aching sadness. My sister had poisoned my dog because he was an inconvenience. Because he was messy. It was the banality of her evil that hurt the most. It wasn't a grand villainous plot. It was just selfishness, distilled to its purest, most toxic form. As I pulled onto the highway, my phone rang. It wasn't a family member. It was a local number. I connected it to the car's Bluetooth. "This is Callista, Ms. Thorne. This is Officer Holloway." My stomach tightened. "Yes, officer. I'm calling with an update," he said. His voice was brisk, professional. "After you left yesterday, I decided to do a little canvass of the neighborhood. You know, just standard procedure." "Okay," I said. "We spoke to your parents' next-door neighbor, a Mrs. Gable. She was a nosy retired librarian who lived on the east side of the fence. She spent most of her days tending to her prize-winning azaleas." "Yes, I know her." I said. "Well," Holloway continued, "it turns out Mrs. Gable has a very sophisticated wildlife camera set up in her oak tree. She likes to watch the cardinals. But the angle of the camera captures a significant portion of your parents' backyard. Specifically, the northeast corner, the hydrangeas. I gripped the steering wheel, and she gave us the SD card." Holloway said, "We just reviewed the footage from Saturday. It is high definition. Ms. Thorne, much clearer than the security camera you mentioned you might have." I held my breath. "We have a clear shot of a female subject matching your sister's description." Holloway said, "She is seen entering the frame at 12:48 p.m. She is seen crouching behind the bushes. She is seen wearing latex gloves. Gloves. She had worn gloves. That meant premeditation. That meant she knew exactly what she was handling. And Ms. Thorne," Holloway added, his voice dropping an octave, "we can clearly see her taking a block out of a bag and burying it, but we also see her rubbing something on it first. It looks like she is applying a paste from a jar." "Peanut butter," I whispered. "It looks that way," Holloway said. "This changes things. Ms. Thorne, this moves it from negligence or a prank gone wrong to malicious intent with aggravated circumstances." "What happens now?" I asked. "I am finalizing the affidavit for an arrest warrant." Holloway said, "We will be paying a visit to the Thorne residence this evening. I suggest you stay away from the house. It is going to get ugly." "I understand," I said. I hung up the phone. I drove in silence. I thought about Tatum in her room, thinking she was the victim. I thought about my mother, thinking she had scrubbed the crime scene clean. They had no idea that the retired librarian next door had been watching the birds. The net had not just closed, it had tightened around their throats. And tonight, for the first time in her life, Tatum was going to learn that actions have consequences that Daddy cannot pay to make go away. The following morning, I walked into the police station with a sense of grim finality. I carried a flash drive containing the digital autopsy of my sister's crime. It held the screenshots of her text messages where she admitted to just wanting to scare Miller. It held the high-definition video file from Mrs. Gable's wildlife camera, showing Tatum in latex gloves burying the poison. It held the veterinary timeline and the photos of the receipt I had taken before my mother destroyed the original. Officer Holloway met me in a small interview room. He was no longer the skeptical beat cop taking a report. He was focused, sharp, and moving with the momentum of a man who knows he has a solid case. He took the drive. He reviewed the files on his monitor while I sat in silence. "This is it," Holloway said, leaning back. "The text message establishes intent. The video establishes the act. The gloves establish premeditation. We are not looking at a misdemeanor anymore. Ms. Thorne, we are looking at felony animal abuse and potential charges for tampering with evidence." I nodded. "Do it," I said, but while the legal gears were grinding forward, the family machine was spinning in reverse. Tatum realized she could not win on facts, so she decided to win on optics. She launched a campaign of character assassination that was impressive in its scope. My phone began to light up with messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. My Aunt Sarah, my cousins in Ohio, even my godmother. The narrative was identical in every call. "Callista, we heard about your breakdown. We know you are under a lot of stress since leaving the company. Callista, please don't take your anger out on your sister. She is worried about you. Tatum was telling everyone that I had snapped. She claimed I was hallucinating conspiracies because I was bitter about being passed over for the promotion. She painted herself as the concerned, victimized sister trying to manage my mental instability. I didn't reply to them. I didn't defend myself. I knew that arguing with a lie only gives it oxygen. Then came the public statement from my mother. She didn't post it on social media, but she said it loud enough at the country club for it to get back to me. She told her circle that I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding and that I needed professional help, not a lawyer. It was a coordinated gaslighting effort. They were trying to isolate me, to make me doubt my own reality, but there was one crack in their wall. My father. Graham Thorne called me on Tuesday afternoon. His voice was different. Usually, he was booming and confident. Today, he sounded tired. "Callista," he said, "I just want to know one thing, and I want the truth. I am listening." "Dad, did you really see a receipt?" he asked. "Or did you just assume she bought it?" "I didn't just see it." "Dad," I said, "I took a photo of it. It was time-stamped. It listed the brand, and Mom admitted to throwing it away." Why would she throw away a piece of paper if it was innocent? There was a long silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. "She told me she never saw it," Graham said quietly. "She told me you were making it up. She is lying to you." "Dad," I said, "just like she lied about the accident. Just like Tatum lied about being at the store. You are the only one in that house who doesn't know what is actually going on." He hung up without saying goodbye. The seed of doubt had been planted. He was a businessman. He understood data, and the data wasn't adding up. 2 hours later, I was sitting in my new office at Raven Peak when Evan Rourke walked in. He held a piece of paper, and he looked amused. "You are popular today," Evan said. "What is that?" I asked. "This," he said, dropping the letter on my desk, "is a formal complaint from Thorncrest Facility Services. It is signed by Tatum Thorne, Executive Vice President." I picked it up. It was a masterpiece of corporate gibberish. It accused me of unethical conduct, harassment of former colleagues, and threatening the reputational integrity of a vendor. It essentially demanded that Raven Peak reconsider my employment. "She is trying to get me fired," I said, staring at the signature. "She thinks if she cuts off my income, I will have to drop the lawsuit." Evan laughed. He sat on the edge of my desk. I had my legal team look at it. Evan said, "They said it is baseless. It is a personal dispute masquerading as a professional grievance. And frankly, Callista, it just confirms that we made the right choice in cutting them loose. If this is how she spends her time writing hit pieces on her sister, instead of fixing her operations, she's going to bankrupt that company in 6 months." He took the letter back and crumpled it into a ball. I told them to shred it. Evan said, "Your job here is safe. In fact, I want you to lead the quarterly review next week. Show them what real leadership looks like." I felt a surge of gratitude that almost brought me to tears. For the first time, my work spoke louder than my last name. "Thank you, Evan," I said. The real blow came at 4 o'clock. Officer Holloway called me back to the station. This time, he wasn't alone. A forensic accountant was sitting with him. We found something interesting about the purchase. Holloway said, "I thought we established it was the corporate card," I asked. "The one ending in 8890. "That is what you saw on the receipt," Holloway corrected. "But when we subpoenaed the actual transaction record from the merchant processor, the card number was different. It was an American Express, a personal card." I frowned. "Tatum doesn't have an American Express." "No," Holloway said. "But your mother does." "Lydia?" I asked. "Yes," Holloway said. "The card used to buy the poison belongs to Lydia Thorne. However, and this is the key, the customer loyalty number entered at the keypad to get the digital receipt and the points. That phone number belongs to Tatum Thorne." I sat back, processing this. "So Tatum used Mom's card." I said, "Exactly." Holloway said, "It connects them both. It suggests that either Lydia bought it for Tatum, or Tatum took Lydia's card to make the purchase, perhaps to hide it from the company expenses you monitor. Given the video shows a younger woman, We believe Tatum made the purchase using her mother's funds. This meant my mother wasn't just covering up the crime after the fact. Her money had paid for the weapon. We brought your mother in for questioning an hour ago. Holloway said, "You did what I asked." We showed her the transaction log. Holloway said, "We told her that her credit card was used to purchase a controlled substance involved in a felony investigation. We told her that if she didn't cooperate, she could be looking at conspiracy charges." And she broke. Holloway said, "She didn't confess to the poisoning, but she admitted that she gave the card to Tatum that day. She said Tatum told her she needed to buy supplies for the garden, and then, when we pressed her about the receipt, she admitted she destroyed it. She put it on record, I asked. She did." Holloway said, "She was crying. She kept saying, 'I just wanted to protect her future. I didn't want her to go to jail over a dog.'" She admitted to obstruction. I said, "Yes," Holloway said, "but in doing so, she placed Tatum at the scene of the purchase. She destroyed her daughter's alibi to save herself from a conspiracy charge. The irony was bitter. My mother tried to save Tatum by destroying the receipt, but by admitting she destroyed it, she proved the receipt existed. She proved the crime happened. So what now, I asked. Now we have probable cause for a search warrant." Holloway said, "A judge just signed it 20 minutes ago." "A search warrant for the house?" I asked. "Not just the house," Holloway said. "We are seizing electronic devices. We have reason to believe that Tatum may have researched the poison or its effects prior to the purchase. We are going to look at her search history. We are going to look at her deleted messages." He stood up and put on his jacket. "We are heading over there now. Ms. Thorne, we are going to take her phone. We are going to take her laptop, and if there is anything on there, any Google search about how much poison to kill a dog or symptoms of rat bait, we will find it." I walked out of the station into the cool evening air. I imagined the scene that was about to unfold. The police cruisers pulled up to the manicured lawn, the neighbors watching from behind their curtains. Mrs. Gable peered through her blinds. Tatum is asked to hand over her iPhone. She lived her entire life on that phone. It was her shield, her connection to the world, her tool for manipulation. And now, it was going to be the witness that testified against her. She thought she had deleted the texts. She thought she had cleared the history. She didn't understand that nothing is ever truly deleted. I got into my car and started the engine. I didn't go to watch. I didn't need to. I drove home to my empty apartment. I poured a glass of wine. I sat by the window. The trap had snapped shut. The silence was over. The scream was about to begin. The digital extraction report from Tatum's iPhone was 60 pages long. It sat on the desk of Assistant District Attorney Vance, a man with a jawline as sharp as the charges he was preparing to file. I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap, feeling a strange numbness. I thought I had seen the bottom of my sister's malice when I watched the video of her burying the poison. I was wrong. The video was just the act. The phone data was the soul of the crime. Vance flipped to page 12. He did not look at me. He looked at the paper with a mixture of professional detachment and human disgust. We recovered the search history from the Safari browser. Vance said, "It appears she was researching this for 3 days prior to the incident. She did not just buy the poison on a whim. She studied it." He read the search terms aloud. Thursday, October 12th, 9:30 p.m. How much rat poison to make a dog sick but not kill? Thursday, October 12th, 9:45 p.m. Symptoms of anticoagulant poisoning in dogs. Friday, October 13th, 8 a.m. How long does it take for a dog to show symptoms of poisoning? Friday, October 13th, 8:15 a.m. Can vet detect rat poison brand? I closed my eyes. Make a dog sick, but not kill. She had tried to calibrate the dosage. She had tried to engineer a tragedy that would be manageable, something that would create chaos and fear, but perhaps stop short of murder, or maybe she just wanted to know how much she could get away with. It did not matter. The intent to harm was premeditated, calculated, and researched over breakfast. It gets worse, Vance said. He turned the page. We recovered a series of deleted text messages exchanged with a contact listed as Brianna. This was sent on Saturday afternoon, about an hour after she returned from the hardware store. He slid the paper across the desk. I looked at the gray and blue bubbles printed in black and white. Tatum, I finally got the stuff. I'm going to do it tomorrow at the barbecue. Brianna, are you sure that is risky? Tatum, I have to. She brought that beast over again last week. Mom and Dad look at it like it is a grandchild. It is disgusting. As long as that dog is around. Callista has an anchor here. I need to cut the rope, Brianna. What if she finds out, Tatum? She won't. She is too busy being the martyr. I am going to teach her a lesson. Once the dog is a problem, Mom will ban it. Then Callista stops coming around. Problem solved. I stared at the words, I need to cut the rope. It was never just about the dog barking or shedding. It was about erasure. Tatum had been trying to push me out of the family dynamic for years, but I was persistent. I showed up. I fixed things. I was useful. And Miller? Miller was the emotional bridge. My parents, despite their flaws, had a soft spot for him. Tatum saw that affection as a finite resource, and she believed Miller was stealing her share. She did not just want to kill my dog. She wanted to surgically remove my presence from the family by traumatizing everyone involved. This establishes motive, Vance said, closing the file, and it upgrades the charge. This is not just animal cruelty. This is aggravated cruelty with malicious intent. In this state, that is a Class E felony. We are also looking at tampering with physical evidence for her attempt to delete these threads and potentially inducing your mother to destroy the receipt. He looked at me directly. If we go to trial, Callista, this will all become public record. The search history, the texts, the video, everything. Good, I said. Let it be public. I walked out of the DA's office into a blinding Tuesday afternoon. My phone had been vibrating in my pocket for 20 minutes. I checked it in the safety of my car. 5 missed calls from a number I did not recognize, and 1 voicemail. I pressed play. Callista, it is me. I am borrowing a friend's phone because the police took mine. Look, you need to call me back. This has gone too far. They are talking about jail time. Callista, jail. For a prank. You need to tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please. Call me. It was Tatum. Her voice was high, thin, and panic-stricken, but there was no remorse. She called it a prank. She was still minimizing it. She was still trying to frame her attempted murder of my dog as a whimsical lapse in judgment. I did not call her back. That evening, I was heating up soup in my kitchen when there was a knock at the door. I checked the peephole. It was Tatum. I hesitated. I should not open it. My lawyer would tell me not to open it, but I wanted to look her in the eye. I wanted to see if the monster looked different now that the mask was off. I opened the door but left the chain on. Tatum stood in the hallway. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy knot. She was wearing sweatpants. She looked like a child who had been grounded, not a woman facing a felony indictment. Callista, she said, pressing her face to the gap. Please let me in. We need to talk. We have nothing to talk about. I said. You have to drop the charges, she said, her voice trembling. You have to. Do you know what this will do to my reputation? I will never get a job in this city again. The mugshot alone will ruin me. You should have thought about that before you put on latex gloves. I said, I am sorry. She blurted out. It was a reflex, not a feeling. Okay, I am sorry. I apologize. Is that what you want? I will write you a letter. I will pay the vet bill. I will give you $5,000. Just tell the DA it was a mistake. Tell him you gave me permission to put down rat traps and I just got confused. I looked at her with a profound sense of pity. She was bargaining with a currency she did not have. You still don't get it, I said. You searched for safe amount. You planned it. You told Brianna you wanted to cut the rope. This wasn't a mistake. Tatum, it was a strategy. She recoiled, as if I had slapped her. You saw the texts. The police saw the texts, and I corrected them. And now the district attorney has them. It is out of my hands. She grabbed the doorframe, her knuckles white. You are enjoying this. You are happy I am suffering. You have always been jealous of me. I am not jealous of you. Tatum, I said quietly, I am terrified of you. And I am done protecting you. I slammed the door. I heard her kick the wood, a dull thud of impotent rage, before she stormed down the hallway. The next day, the collapse of Thorncrest Facility Services began in earnest. With Raven Peak gone, other clients were getting nervous. The rumors were spreading not about the poisoning, but about the incompetence. Without me there to put out the fires, the operational structure was crumbling. My father called me at 10 o'clock in the morning. "Callista," he said. His voice sounded hoarse, like he had been shouting for hours. "We lost the contract with the municipal school district. They said our compliance paperwork was filed late." "I know." I said, "I used to file it on the 1st of every month. Today is the 18th. You need to come back," Graham said. "It wasn't a request. It was a plea. I will fire Tatum. I will remove her from the board. I will give you the shares you asked for. 20%. No, 30%. Just come back and fix this. The ship is sinking. Callista." I stood by the window of my new office at Raven Peak, looking out at the city skyline. I remembered the years I had spent begging for a title, begging for equity, begging for respect. I remembered him telling me I was just a worker. "It is too late, Dad." I said, "Don't do this." He begged, "This is your grandfather's company. This is your heritage. My heritage is a poisoned dog and a sister who wishes I never existed." I said, "I have a new job. I have a team that respects me. I am not coming back to bail out the water so you can pretend the boat isn't rotten." There was a long silence. Then, for the first time in my 32 years of life, my father spoke to me without the armor of his ego. "I messed up," he whispered. "I waited. I let her run over you," he said. I thought you were strong enough to take it. I thought she needed the help more than you did. I was wrong to let you carry it all alone. Callista, I was wrong." It was the apology I had waited a lifetime to hear, and as I heard it, I realized it changed nothing. It didn't heal the wound, it just acknowledged the scar. "I appreciate you saying that, Dad," I said. "I really do. But I'm not saving the company. I am saving the truth. And the truth is, Thorncrest deserves to fail if it relies on a person you refuse to value." I hung up. I did not feel triumphant. I felt light, as if a heavy coat I had been wearing since childhood had finally slipped off my shoulders. 2 days later, the official summons was issued. Tatum Thorne was formally charged with aggravated cruelty to animals and tampering with physical evidence. The arraignment was set for Monday morning. The story broke in the local paper the next day. "Local executive charged in family pet poisoning scandal." The headline was sensational. The details were damning. I stayed away from social media. I stayed away from the house. I focused on my work at Raven Peak, where the problems were logical and the solutions were mechanical. On Friday afternoon, my lawyer, a sharp woman named Elena, who Evan had recommended, called me. "Callista," she said, "we have a development." "Did she plead guilty?" I asked. "No," Elena said. Her voice was tight. "She has retained a new defense attorney, a guy known for dirty tactics, and they just filed a motion to dismiss based on a new theory of the case." "What theory?" I asked. Elena paused. "They are claiming entrapment, and not by the police, by you." I laughed. "That is insane. They are claiming that you staged the entire event." Elena said, "Tatum is claiming that you purchased the poison using your mother's card, which you had access to, and that you planted the search history on her phone when she left it unattended. She is claiming that you instructed her to bury the garden supplies in the yard as part of a landscaping project, and that you filmed it to frame her because you were angry about the promotion." I gripped the phone. "That is a lie. The texts. She claims you sent the text to yourself from her phone." Elena said, "She is saying you are a disgruntled employee who orchestrated a complex revenge plot to destroy her and the company. She is painting you as the villain. Callista. She is saying you poisoned your own dog to frame her." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was the ultimate narcissist's pivot. If you cannot deny the evidence, you corrupt the context. She was willing to accuse me of hurting Miller, the one thing she knew I loved more than anything, to save her own skin. It was desperate. It was delusional. But in a courtroom, with a jury that didn't know us, it introduced the one thing a defense attorney needs: reasonable doubt. She is declaring war. I whispered. No, Elena said. She is panicking. This is the last move of a drowning person. But Callista, you need to be ready. They are going to come for your character. They are going to drag up every argument, every workplace dispute, every moment you ever raise your voice. They are going to try to turn you into a monster. I looked at the photo of Miller on my desk. He was recovering. He was home. He was alive. Let them try. I said. I hung up the phone. I wasn't afraid. I had spent my whole life being the invisible one, the quiet one, the one who absorbed the shocks. They thought that made me weak. They were about to find out that being the one who holds everything up makes you the strongest person in the room. And I was ready to bring the whole house down on top of them. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. On television, justice always seems to happen in cavernous halls with mahogany benches and dramatic lighting. In reality, the preliminary hearing for the case of the People versus Tatum Thorne took place in a fluorescent-lit room that smelled faintly of floor wax and stale anxiety. My sister sat at the defense table. She was wearing a soft blue cardigan and a pearl necklace, an outfit carefully curated to suggest innocence and youth. She did not look at me. She stared straight ahead at the judge, a stern woman named Judge Holloway, no relation to the detective, who looked like she had no patience for family theatrics. Tatum's lawyer was a man named Mr. Sterling. He had silver hair, a tan that looked painted on, and a reputation for turning victims into villains. He wasted no time in attacking my character. His strategy was simple: ignore the poison and focus on the resentment. Ms. Thorne, Sterling said, pacing in front of the witness stand. Is it not true that on the day before this alleged incident, your father announced that your younger sister, Tatum, would be taking over the family company? That is true, I said. My voice was steady. I had rehearsed this with the prosecutor. I knew I had to be a stone wall. And is it not true, Sterling continued, raising his voice slightly for effect, that you were angry, that you demanded shares of the company, that you felt entitled to a position that was given to your sister? I was disappointed, so I corrected it, but I was not surprised. Disappointed enough to stage a crisis? Sterling asked. Disappointed enough to plant a bag of garden supplies in the yard, poison your own dog, and then frame your sister to destroy her reputation and force her out of the company? It is quite a coincidence, is it not? You lose the promotion on Monday, and by Tuesday, your sister is facing a felony. I looked at him. I looked at the jury box. Even though there was no jury today, only the judge determining if there was sufficient evidence to proceed to a full trial, it is not a coincidence. Mr. Sterling, I said, it is a reaction. My sister felt threatened by my presence in the family dynamic. She wanted to remove the one thing that kept me coming back to the house. The poison was not about the company. It was about control. Sterling scoffed. That sounds like a lot of psychological projection. Ms. Thorne, you have no direct proof she fed the dog. You have a blurry video of a woman in a backyard. You have a receipt photo that could be photoshopped. You have a text message that is ambiguous at best. I did not take the bait. I did not get angry. I simply pointed to the evidence table. I have a veterinary toxicology report confirming the specific brand of poison found on the receipt. I said, I have a GPS log from the company vehicle placing Tatum at the hardware store at the exact minute the receipt was stamped. I have a text message where she admits she wanted to cut the rope, and I have the sworn statement of my mother, who admitted to destroying the physical receipt to protect her. Sterling froze. He knew about the statement, of course, but hearing it said aloud in open court shifted the air in the room. My mother, Lydia, was called to the stand next. This was the moment the family facade finally cracked. Lydia Thorne walked to the witness stand looking like she was walking to the gallows. She was trembling. When the prosecutor asked her to state her name, she had to clear her throat twice. Mrs. Thorne, the prosecutor asked, did you or did you not throw away a receipt from Harding's Home and Garden that your daughter Callista found in your cookbook? Lydia gripped her purse. I threw away some papers. I was cleaning. Did you read the receipt before you threw it away? The prosecutor pressed. Lydia looked at Tatum. Tatum's eyes were wide, pleading. I glanced at it. Lydia whispered, and what did it say? It said, it listed some gardening items. Did it list rat poison? Lydia closed her eyes. A tear leaked out, cutting through her foundation. I don't remember specifically. I just saw that it was from the day before. And I knew Callista was asking about it. So you destroyed it to prevent Callista from seeing it. I destroyed it to stop the fighting, Lydia cried out. Her composure shattered. I just wanted it to stop. I did not want my daughters tearing each other apart over a mistake. It was just a mistake. By calling it a mistake, the prosecutor said calmly, you are admitting that the purchase happened. You are admitting that Tatum bought the poison. Because if she hadn't bought it, the receipt would not have mattered. Would it? Lydia put her face in her hands. The courtroom was silent. In her attempt to save Tatum, she had just handed the prosecution the hammer to seal the coffin. But the final blow to the defense's theory that I was a bitter, incompetent employee seeking revenge came from an unexpected source. Mr. Sterling had tried to argue that I was fired from Thorncrest for poor performance, adding fuel to my alleged motive. To rebut this, the prosecution submitted a letter from Evan Rourke, the CEO of Raven Peak Packaging. The prosecutor read it aloud for the record. To whom it may concern, Callista Thorne was not fired. She resigned. Furthermore, Raven Peak Packaging terminated our contract with Thorncrest solely due to the incompetence of the remaining management, specifically Tatum Thorne. We subsequently hired Callista Thorne as a director because she was the only competent operator in the organization. Any suggestion that she lacks professional integrity is demonstrably false. Tatum slumped in her chair. The narrative that I was the crazy, jealous sister was dissolving. I was a successful professional. She was the one who needed her mother to hide her trash. Then, my father, Graham, stood up in the back of the courtroom. He was not on the witness list. He walked to the bailiff and handed him a thick manila envelope. There was a brief conference between the lawyers and the judge. The defense attorney looked at the contents and turned pale. My father had submitted the internal expense reports for the last 3 years. He didn't speak. He just sat back down, looking at his hands. The documents revealed a pattern. Tatum had used the company credit card for personal vacations, for designer handbags, and yes, for miscellaneous supplies at hardware stores that coincided with other family accidents, a ruined garden party here, a damaged car there. It wasn't just the poison. It was a history of using family resources to fund her chaotic lifestyle and cover her tracks. It destroyed the lost wallet theory completely. It established that Tatum treated the company accounts as her personal piggy bank, making the purchase of the poison just another unauthorized transaction in a long list of entitlements. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, the air was thick. The prosecutor, Vance, pulled me aside. They are drowning, Vance said. The mother's testimony killed the alibi. The father's documents killed the character defense. I am going to offer a plea deal. What kind of deal? I asked. If she pleads guilty to the felony count of aggravated cruelty and the obstruction charge, we will recommend a sentence of 3 years in state prison, eligible for parole after 18 months, plus 5 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric counseling. 3 years. I repeated, if we go to trial and she is convicted, Vance warned. Considering the premeditation and the use of the poison, which is a controlled substance, she could face up to 7 years. Sterling knows this. He will tell her to take the deal. I looked down the hallway. Tatum was standing with Mr. Sterling and our mother. She was crying, but it was the angry, petulant crying of a child who has been told she cannot have dessert. She was gesturing wildly, pointing at me. I walked past them to get water. Tatum broke away from her lawyer and lunged toward me. You did this, she hissed. Her eyes were red and swollen. You made Dad give them those papers. You turned him against me. I didn't turn him. Tatum, I said calmly, I just stopped covering for you. Just drop it, she begged, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. Tell them you made a mistake. Tell them the receipt was for something else. If I go to prison, Callista, I will die there. I cannot go to prison. Mom is falling apart. Please, I will sign over the company. I will leave town. Just make it stop. She was still bargaining. She still thought this was a transaction. She thought she could trade the company for her freedom, as if justice was a commodity we could swap like baseball cards. I looked at her, and I felt nothing. The sister I thought I had, the annoying but ultimately harmless sibling, had never existed. This woman was a stranger who viewed living things as obstacles to be removed. I cannot stop it, I said. You started a fire. Tatum, now you have to burn. I walked away. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank page of the victim impact statement the victim advocate had asked me to draft. They told me I might have a chance to read it if she took the plea or was convicted. I typed, deleted, and typed again. How do you explain that the crime wasn't just about a dog? It was about safety. It was about the realization that the people who were supposed to love you were actually waiting for you to fail. I am not asking for revenge, I wrote. I am asking for a boundary. For 30 years, my family has operated without them. We were taught that forgiveness was mandatory, regardless of the sin. We were taught that keeping the peace was more important than telling the truth. But peace built on a lie is not peace. It is just quiet denial. My sister poisoned my dog, not because she hated the animal, but because she wanted to hurt me. And she believed she was untouchable. She believed that our mother would clean up the mess, and our father would pay the bill. She was right. Until now. I am asking the court to draw the line that my parents never could. I saved the document. My phone pinged. It was an email. The subject line was blank. The sender was an anonymous address. Something generic like Truth Seeker 123. I opened it. There was no text, just an audio file attachment. I hesitated. My first thought was that it was malware, or maybe a threat from one of Tatum's friends. But curiosity is a powerful force. I clicked on the file. It was a recording from a crowded room. I could hear clinking glasses and the hum of background chatter. It sounded like a bar or a club. Then, a voice cut through the noise. It was slurring slightly, arrogant and loud. It was Tatum. She is so pathetic. Tatum's voice said, She actually thinks the dog got sick from a bug. I swear, Callista is the dumbest smart person I know. Another voice, a female, laughed. But aren't you worried it might die? That rat stuff is hardcore. Tatum laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. It won't die, Tatum said. It is a big dog. It will just suffer enough to cost her a fortune in vet bills. And if it does die, who cares? It is just a mutt. As long as it disappears from my house, I win. Honestly, I should have done it years ago. The recording ended. I sat in the silence of my living room, the darkness pressing in against the windows. If it does die, who cares? This was not the prank she claimed. This was not the scare tactic she admitted to in the texts. This was a callous disregard for life. She had accepted the possibility of death and dismissed it as a convenient outcome. This recording was the nuclear option. If I gave this to the prosecutor tomorrow morning, before the plea deal was finalized, the offer of 3 years would be off the table. This proved depravity. This proved a lack of remorse that bordered on sociopathy. If the judge heard this, Tatum wouldn't get 3 years. She would get the maximum. I looked at the file. I looked at the time. It was 11 p.m. The hearing for the plea entry was at 9 a.m. I forwarded the email to Vance. I added a single line of text. Listen to this before you sign anything. I closed my laptop. The line in the sand had just become a canyon, and there was no way for Tatum to jump across it now. The courtroom air was heavy, charged with the static of impending judgment. My sister, Tatum, sat at the defense table, picking at a loose thread on her cardigan. She looked small. She looked like the victim she had pretended to be for her entire life. She was expecting the plea deal we had discussed, a slap on the wrist, probation, maybe some community service. She thought she had weathered the storm. She thought that because she was a thorn, She was waterproof. She did not know about the email. Assistant District Attorney Vance stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He did not look at the defense attorney. He looked at the judge. "Your Honor," Vance said, his voice cutting through the hum of the room. "Before we proceed with the sentencing recommendation, the people would like to submit a final piece of evidence. It was received late last night, but its relevance to the defendant's character and lack of remorse is undeniable. Mr. Sterling, Tatum's lawyer, shot up. Objection. We have not reviewed this. We sent a copy to your office at 7 o'clock this morning," Counselor Vance said coolly. The judge nodded. "Proceed. Mr. Vance." Vance pulled out a laptop and connected it to the court's audio system. The room fell silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a split second. I watched Tatum. She frowned, confused. She didn't remember the conversation. She had probably had too many drinks that night. She had forgotten that in the age of smartphones, privacy is a myth. Vance pressed play. The sound of clinking glasses filled the courtroom. Then, Tatum's voice, loud and slurring, echoed off the wood-paneled walls. "She is so pathetic. She actually thinks the dog got sick from a bug." Tatum froze. Her face drained of color, turning a sickly shade of gray. She gripped the edge of the table. "It won't die. It is a big dog. It will just suffer enough to cost her a fortune in vet bills. And if it does die, who cares? It is just a mutt. As long as it disappears from my house, I win." The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a room where a mask had been ripped off, revealing something ugly and rotting underneath. Tatum's lawyer closed his eyes. He knew. The plea deal was dead. The narrative of the accidental prank was dead. The misunderstanding was dead. Vance looked at the jury box, then back to the judge. "Your Honor," Vance said, "the defendant claimed this was a deterrent. She claimed she did not intend to kill. In her own words, she accepted the death of the animal as a victory condition. This establishes depravity. This establishes a total lack of empathy." Tatum began to cry. It wasn't the soft, manipulative weeping she had perfected over the years. It was a jagged, ugly sound. "I didn't mean it," she wailed. Standing up, "I was drunk. I was just talking trash. I didn't mean it. Sit down." "Ms. Thorne," the judge snapped. But Tatum was spiraling. She turned to look at our mother in the gallery. "Mom, tell them I love animals. Tell them it was an accident." Lydia Thorne sat in the front row. She was wearing her Sunday best. She looked at her favorite daughter, the girl she had protected, coddled, and covered for since birth. She looked at the woman who had just laughed about killing a living creature. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. The phrase, "It was an accident," died in her throat. She couldn't say it. Not here, not after that recording. The lie had been stripped away, and all that was left was the cover-up. Judge Holloway adjusted her glasses. She looked at Tatum with a gaze that could freeze water. "Ms. Thorne," the judge said, "you have manipulated your family. You have wasted the court's time with false narratives. You have attempted to frame your sister for your own crime, and you have shown a callous disregard for life that chills this court." The judge picked up a stack of papers. "The plea agreement is rejected," the judge stated, "based on the overwhelming evidence of premeditation, the abuse of trust, the corruption of a minor referring to your attempt to involve your mother in the destruction of evidence and the malicious intent confirmed by the recording. I am issuing a sentence in line with the maximum guidelines for aggravated cruelty and tampering with evidence." Tatum was shaking her head violently. No, please. I will do community service. I will pay." "Tatum Thorne," the judge continued, her voice like a gavel strike, "you are sentenced to 3 years in the state correctional facility. You are to surrender immediately. 3 years. The words hung in the air. Tatum screamed. It was a primal sound of disbelief. A bailiff moved behind her, taking her wrists to secure them. For the first time in her life, no one rushed to help her. Mr. Sterling began stuffing papers into his briefcase, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. My father, Graham, sat with his head bowed, his hands covering his face. My mother was sobbing quietly, a hand over her mouth, rocking back and forth. I felt nothing, no joy, no triumph, just a sudden, immense lightness. The gravity that had held me down, the weight of their lies, had simply vanished. The bailiff led Tatum away. She looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were wild, filled with hatred and fear. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just looked at me like I was the one who had betrayed her by refusing to be a victim. The doors closed behind her. I walked out of the courtroom and into the bright hallway. My parents were standing near the elevators. They looked like refugees from a disaster zone. My father saw me. He stepped forward. He looked 10 years older than he had a month ago. "Callista," he said. His voice was cracked. I stopped. I didn't walk away. I stood my ground. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I know that word isn't enough. I fed the wrong wolf. Callista, I let her become this. I thought if I gave her everything, she would be happy. I didn't realize I was teaching her that she could take everything." I looked at him. I saw the regret. It was real. But it was also too late to save the family business, and too late to save the years I had spent feeling worthless. "You didn't just feed the wolf, Dad," I said softly. "You offered me the meal." He flinched, tears welling in his eyes. "I know." My mother wiped her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She looked at me, her expression a mix of sorrow and resentment. "Was it worth it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Was it worth sending your sister to prison for a dog?" I looked at her. She still didn't get it. She never would, to her. The appearance of the family was more important than the soul of it. It wasn't about the dog. "Mom," I said, "and it wasn't about prison, it was about the truth. You looked me in the eye and told me it was an accident when you knew it was a crime. You chose to be an accomplice instead of a mother." She stiffened. "I tried to keep us together." "No," I said. "You tried to keep us quiet. There is a difference." I took a step back, creating a physical distance between us. "I'm going to live my life now. Mom, I have a job where I'm respected. I have a home where I'm safe. If you want to be part of that life, you are welcome. But here is the rule. You never lie to me again. You never gaslight me again. And you never, ever ask me to sacrifice my dignity for your comfort." Lydia stared at me. She saw the new line I had drawn. It was etched in stone. "If you can't do that," I continued, "then you have lost both daughters today, one to the state and one to the truth." I turned and walked toward the exit. I didn't wait for her answer. The choice was hers. I had already made mine. When I got home, Miller was waiting for me. He was lying on his bed in the living room. He stood up slowly when I walked in. He was thinner than before. The poison had done permanent damage to his kidneys, and he would be on a strict diet for the rest of his life. He wasn't the bounding, energetic dog he used to be. He was quieter. He got tired easily, but he was alive. I sat down on the floor next to him. He rested his heavy head on my lap and let out a long sigh. I buried my hands in his fur, feeling the warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. He was a survivor, like me. We sat there for a long time as the sun went down, casting long shadows across the apartment. I thought about the empty chair at the Thorne family table. I thought about the silence in the house where I grew up. It was a tragedy, yes, but it was a necessary one. Sometimes, you have to let the rot burn out so something healthy can grow in the ashes. The next morning, I walked into the headquarters of Raven Peak Packaging. I swiped my badge at the turnstile. It beeped a cheerful green. "Morning, Ms. Thorne," the security guard said. "Good morning, Jerry," I replied. I took the elevator up to the 12th floor. I walked into the conference room. My team was already there. 6 facility managers, all looking at blueprints spread out on the table. When I walked in, they didn't ignore me. They didn't roll their eyes. They stopped talking and looked at me. "Ready to start?" Callista, one of them asked. I looked at the blueprints. I looked at the people who waited for my input, who trusted my judgment, who valued my presence. I smiled. "Yes," I said. "Let's get to work." I opened my laptop. I didn't feel the need to prove myself. I didn't feel the need to fight for space. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I had spent my whole life fighting for a peace that I thought meant everyone getting along. I was wrong. Peace isn't winning. Peace is not having to ask for permission to be respected. Thank you so much for listening to this story. It was a long journey for Callista, but justice was finally served. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you tuning in from work, from home, or maybe while walking your own dog? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading about where our community is from. Please don't forget to subscribe to Veronica Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to see that truth always wins in the end.